letters the Rebbe answered was this letter, that it was sending a shiur to the Rebbe. So the Rebbe wrote back that that Kedai, it's worthwhile, it should be published in a newspaper or in a platform, in other words, in a public thing, V'lei shel yochid, and not something from a private person. In other words, it should be more public because it'll be more successful. U'matev, and the better would be if it would be before the 12th of Tammuz, which is when this Hemshech, the Kuntras Mayon, the Rebbe Rashab said in 1903. That's when he said there were 7 Maimorim, the Hasidic discourses. So he says that it's Matev, it should be in a public thing. So I handed it in then to the Kfar Chabad, and they made a whole introduction. This an answer from the Rebbe. So this was the Rebbe was very much disconnected with Yud Beis Tammuz. So this is basically what it is. That Hemshechem here we're speaking about a Hemshech that was written before, and the breaks were done later, the beginning and the end. Like the Rebbe Rashab would carve around a certain section, would make this a maimer for itself, write a beginning and an end, ask questions, and then. So the Rebbe says, "V'chakach b'shasu amira v'samach lo b'shana mir v'chadashim shalach ksibas ha'hemshech heisifu hascholas v'siyumim l'maimor." And then b'shas he said the maimer. When he would say he would deliver this Hasidic discourse in public or near it in the years or in the months after he wrote the Hemshech, sometimes he could have written the Hemshech years earlier. He added beginnings and ends of the Maimorim, openings and conclusions. As it's understood, as it is obvious from looking at their manuscripts in many discourses, that what they did is there was all one Hemshech, and from the side you can see they wrote a beginning of a Maimer. Sometimes I think it was even on the margin. They're right near it. On the beginning of Maimer, a few questions, and then they would just carve out this and this piece. A few pages, and then they would answer the questions, and that's how they made the Maimorim. This could be the Rebbe Marash also. The Rebbe writes it actually as an introduction to the Rebbe Marash, the 4th leader of Chabad Hasidic discourses, and the Rebbe Rashab, who was the son, the 5th leader of Chabad. Moving from this, we understand from this we understand that there is a connection between the beginning and the end of the Maimer to the contents of the Maimer. Why? Because he selected this basic topic that he was writing on. It should be under the title of this verse, of this opening, of this beginning of the Maimer. So they must have a connection. It's not stam et gepakta inyan. He put it together in order because it relates to that verse. What does the Rebbe Rashab discuss in the year 1884? In this verse of Avrahams Zoken Babayomim, he speaks about the attribute of royalty, about the elevation and the drawing down of Malchus, which means that the Sphira, the attribute of Malchus, elevates in Atzilus itself to higher. It also descends to the lower worlds, to Bria, Yitzira, and Asiya. The Inyan Aliyas HaMalchus b'Bchinas Avo, which means Aliyas HaMalchus. There's 2 ways how a person relates to another person. There's one way that he speaks with him face to face, and then there's another way that it's back to back. In other words, they're not communicating directly. The lower level of the elevation of the attribute of royalty is acher b'acher. It's in other words back to back. It's not a full fledged connection between one and another. Dugmas ha'aveda diskafia. This is an aveda viskafia. It's like someone subdues the negative element, but it didn't convert it yet. It didn't become positive yet. Turns his back on it. Right. Turns his back on him, and that's the way he ignores him and keeps him out of his way. But that it should come down, drawing down the attribute of royalty in face to face. So this is an Aveda Vishapcha that is actually converting it, that it becomes also from negative to positive. So understand what this means. To understand this more. So we find it also in a very broad sensed way discussed and explained and elaborated by MaMaar Kvei Kedushas Admorat Tzemach Tzedek in the discourse of the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe of Chabad. Shezocha dereinu gamkim v'nitfas la'achreinu, that our generation merited and it was lately printed, vices which this is the union of Eirat Teira and Breishis, one of the volumes. Every one of the Chumashim has about 5-6 volumes of Eirat Teira, writings of the Tzemach Tzedek. And this is a drop of the ocean, because Tzemach Tzedek wrote in his lifetime 600,000 pages. Every day, from 12 years old, he would write 24 amudim, 24 pages. And most of it were burnt in the fires, but it was something that Tzemach Tzedek constantly wrote. And for Shabbos, he wrote Metzoi Shabbos. This is another volume of Eirat Teira that came out in 1984. This is already the later part, the last leg of the Eirat Teira publishings, because Eirat Teira started to come out in 1966. The Rebbe then had a fundraising called Keren HaMeya, the fundraising of 100. There was 100 years of the Tzemach Tzedek's passing. And the Rebbe then asked that everybody should give money and start publishing Eirat Teira. So to date, we have about 45 or 50 volumes of Eirat Teira. And Chumash, Tanakh, MaMaar Chazal, Tefillah, and Inyanim. Topics. There's a certain Eirat Teira that is on topics that does not have a beginning of a pasuk or something from our sages. It is from the Talmud. It is a topic. L'hovn Inyan Ein Sof, to understand Ein Sof. To other topics. So the Rebbe once discussed with Rashag, his brother-in-law, upstairs once by a meal, Yom Tov meal, that he's doubtful, he's not sure yet how to publish these Maimarim. That are like, loose Maimarim. They don't belong to a Parsha, not a Torah portion. They don't begin with a verse of a Torah portion. They don't begin with a quote from the Talmud. It's just Maimarim on topics. Eventually the Rebbe printed it, published it as Inyanim. A sefer called Inyanim. Eirat Teira al Inyanim. I think it's together with the MaMaar Razal. So this is basically Zocha Dereinu. And actually the Rebbe makes a very interesting point. Twice the Rebbe mentions on this page Zocha Dereinu, our generation merited. Which means to say, and actually when we think about it, our generation merited the publishing of the whole Chassidus Chabad. Up till now, up to 1970, the Rebbe's Rashabs, the fifth leader of Chabad, none of his discourses, besides single ones, you can count them probably on 10 fingers, were already published. No volumes were published yet from the Rebbe Rashav's Maimarim. The Alter Rebbe's Maimarim, there were 2, the Teira Eir and the Likutei Teira were published, and Hanochas Haraf and Ashalach Lozni, another 2 Svarim, besides the Tanya. Then the Rebbe came and published 27 books, 27 Svarim from the Alter Rebbe's Maimari Admor Azokin. The Mittel Rebbe, the Rebbe started to publish Maimarim from the Mittel Rebbe on Chumash, on Drushi Chasana, on Inyanim, Maimarim Kontreisim it's called, from the Mittel Rebbe. Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe published over 50 volumes of Tzemach Tzedek's writings. From the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe published all the volumes. Today, the 17 years of the leadership of the Rebbe Marash, we have today come out all the years. I think it's only Mem Beis that we don't have. Mem Aleph, I think, is already also in print, was printed. Some things are actually now in print for a while already. The Rebbe Rashabs were printed from beginning to end, from Tafresh Mem Gimel from 1883 till 1920. In our time, when we were young students, in the beginning of the 70s, we would collect these Maimarim one by one when they were written, typed. Somebody found something in a manuscript, he would type it. There were chaver in different yeshivas typing, and they would circulate it, mimeograph it, and the blue copies they had then. And that's how we would have the Maimarim. There was nothing. The Rebbe had the Maimarim, but it wasn't published that time. Occasionally, when the Rebbe would say a discourse that was based on the Rebbe Rashav's Maimar, he would, after Shabbos, publish the Maimar. And it's interesting the way the Rebbe phrased the introduction. The Rebbe would publish the Maimah, and the Rebbe said the Maimah was said this previous Shabbos.